Thank you very much. Welcome once again. This is Achievers College of Professionals Embu, where we raise manpower. Today we are looking at economics, and in our topic today we are going to look at the demand analysis. In the demand analysis, so our topic today is demand analysis. Demand analysis. In this topic, what we are going to discuss today is we are going to look at the definition of demand. After we look at the definition of demand, we look at the two types of demand, whereby we talk of individual demand and market demand. We are going to look at the factors that affect demand. We are going to look at the exceptional demand curves. We will look at the various types of demand. We are going to look at the movements and the shifts along a demand curve. And then we are going to look at the elasticity of demand. We look at the different types of elasticity of demand, where we talk of income elasticity, price elasticity, and cross-price elasticity. Then we are going to look at how do we measure this elasticity of demand. We use two types of elasticity, whereby we see it is point elasticity and arc elasticity. When we look at the various types of elasticity, we are going to look at the various applications in elasticity of demand. Where can we apply the elasticity of demand, either in management or economic decision making of a particular government? So let us start by definition of demand. The definition of demand. When we talk of demand, what is demand? And we say that demand, it is the customer's desire to purchase goods. Customers desire to purchase goods and services. And when you have the desire to purchase the goods and the services, then you must be willing to pay the price for that particular good or service. So when we are talking about the demand, by definition, we say that demand is what we are saying, customers desire to purchase goods. It is the customers desire to purchase goods and services, and willingness to pay price for the goods and services. Because we say that you might be willing, when you say demand, is that you can be in a position to desire to have something. Maybe you can desire to have a car, you can desire to have an aeroplane, but do you have do you have now the willingness? Do you have what we call the purchasing power? Yes, you can have the desire, you can get the desire, but you do not have the purchasing power to purchase that particular commodity. So in short, we are saying that demand is the customer's desire to purchase goods and services and willingness to pay a price for the specific good or services that one is desiring. And from there we look at the law of demand. There is what we call the law of demand. And most of people know the law of demand. And the law of demand states that holding other factors constant, the price of a particular commodity, when the price of a particular commodity increases, the demand goes down, and vice versa. Meaning that if the price increases, you are saying that ceteris paribus, and meaning holding other factors constant, holding or factors constant, holding of other constant, when the price of goods or services increases, the demand for the goods, the demand, you can say, just shorten it, the demand decreases, and when the price decreases, the demand increases, or vice versa. Meaning that if the particular price of a particular good increases, then the demand will decrease. Holding other factors constant, because there are some areas that, or some goods and services that you cannot do without. That means that if those prices increases, you'll continue purchasing those goods. But holding all the other factors constant, that is why we have said holding all factors constant. If the price of a particular commodity goes up, the demand goes down, and vice versa. If the price goes down, the demand moves up. And that the law of demand is what now gives us the demand curve. Let us look at the demand curve now, so that we can represent what we are, that law graphically. We can represent the law graphically, meaning that the law of demand states that this is what we have. On the y-axis, we have the price, which we denote as P. On the x-axis, we have the quantity demanded. Quantity demanded, which we call Q. We have said that it has an inverse relationship. We say that it has an inverse relationship. Inverse relationship. Inverse relationship. Meaning that if the price, we have seen that the law states that if the price goes up, the demand goes down. So our inverse relationship is like this. Meaning, an example, if for example, we have price 1. If we have price 1, the quantity demanded will be quantity 1. If we increase the price, maybe to price 2 here, then we'll have the quantity demanded goes down, we'll have quantity 2. Meaning that what we are seeing is that if we increase the price, if the price increases, quantity decreases. That is what we are calling the inverse relationship. Inverse relationship. That when the price increases, demand decreases. When the price decreases, demand increases. That is the inverse relationship we are talking about. And now, when we are looking at that, we have various types of, we are saying holding other factors constant. Holding all factors constant, because there are some factors that will make you purchase a particular commodity, even if it increases the price. For example, we have a very, 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 very inferior good, but you cannot do without. For example, if it is something like salt, if you have salt, even if salt costs 1,000 shillings, people will still buy. If it costs 5 bob, people will still purchase. So we are holding that factor. That's why we are saying holding all factors constant. That is where now the law of demand applies. The law of demand applies. Now, let us look at number 2, what we are saying, what we are calling individual demand and individual demand and market demand. Just as the ones indicate, individual demand is the demand for a particular person, what we call now the household. If maybe it is me, I am demanding to purchase pens. That is my own demand. Then this individual demand is what leads to market demand. Because my demand, your demand, the other person's demand, when we aggregate it together, it comes to market demand. Because you're saying that, for example, we have here in Achievers, we have like me, I require a pen, another students require a pen, another students require a pen. We have like a demand for various individuals who require some pen. What we call a market demand, if we consolidate now that demand for various students, then we say that we aggregate it. It becomes the market demand. So such that we will be saying now, achievers requires pen. So it is that market that becomes individual demand translates to market demand. Now, let us look at the factors influencing demand, because we are saying holding other factors constant. Factors influencing demand. Remember, we have said, according to the law of demand, holding of other factors constant. So it means that there are some factors that affect the demand of a particular commodity. Number one, we will look at one of the factors that influence demand or determines demand. Number one, we say it is one, price. And we see how each of these affect the demand. We have the price. We have seen from the law of demand that if the price increases, demand decreases, and vice versa. So when the price increases, demand decreases. Because you say that if, for example, we have the price of oranges, if the price of oranges increase, then people will tend to turn to other fruits like, let's say, bananas. And then if the price increases for oranges, people will demand less of those oranges and go to something else. So price is one of the factors that influence demand. Number two, we say we have tastes and preferences. Tastes and preferences. And in this taste and preferences now, it depends on each particular person. For example, there are those people who like big pen, others would like Haco pen, others like fine point pens, and so forth. So, if depending on your taste, if the taste maybe for fine point pen is higher than for the other types of pens, then it means that its demand will increase. So if the taste and the preferences now are more, then it means the demand will increase. If the taste and the most of the people do not prefer that particular kind of a commodity, then the price will go down. A good example, if we are like a place like in Mandera, where we have Muslims, majority are Muslims, and in Embu, where we have majority being Christians, it means that the demand for pork pigs in Mandera is low, because now the Muslims do not use pork. So it means that there are no much demand, because you find that the people there will not prefer to eat pork. In Embu, the demand for pork is high, because people now they use that particular commodity. So depending on the taste and the preferences is going to affect the demand. Number three, the other thing that affects the demand is what we call the population. It's what we call the population. We have the population. Population, it is automatically. This determines the quantity. This population determines the quantity. Determines the quantity demanded. Because the more people we have, the more people will demand some items. Then the less people we have, the less people will demand a particular kind of a commodity. Number four factor that affects demand is what we call the prices of substitutes. Substitute goods. Let's talk about substitute goods. Substitute goods, when you talk about substitutes, substitute goods are goods that can be used instead of another. For example, in beverage, you can decide that you can take Coke, or you can decide you want Pepsi. Or you can decide you are not going to take coffee, you are going to take tea. So they serve the same purpose, they are all beverages. So these are substitutes. So if the price of one increases, the price of the other, the demand for the other type of commodity will increase. For example, here we say that if price of substitutes, if price of substitute commodity, substitute increases, then demand of a certain commodity decrease in price of the other commodity is going to increase. For example, if the price, for example, if the price of coffee increases, demand for tea increases. Because many people will not purchase coffee, they are going to purchase tea. Because they prefer, most people now would say that coffee and tea, they are substitutes. So many people will say that if price for coffee increases, then why don't I use tea? So the demand for coffee will increase, because remember we have said as the price increases, demand decreases, but the demand for tea is going to increase. So it's a vice versa. Then we have the other thing is the price of complementary goods. Complementary goods. Complementary goods. Complementary goods, we say that complementary goods, they are goods that go hand in hand. Hand in hand. Goods that go hand in hand. For example, we have shoes and shoe polish. Because if the demand for shoes increases, the demand for shoe polish is also going to increase. If many people decided that they are going to be using yamokas or they are going to be using sandals, then it means that the demand for shoe polish is not going to be there, because many people now will not be using those. They will not be using the shoe polish. Then the other thing that affects the demand is the expectations, future expectations. Call it future expectation of changes in price. Changes in price. When people anticipate that the prices are going to change for a particular commodity, for example, when COVID was pronounced in Kenya and there was lockdown, people anticipated that the prices for various commodities is going to increase. The price for unga, the price for sugar, the price for so many things. People anticipated is going to increase due to the lockdown. So what happens? Very many people decided to go to the shopping malls or to the shops to purchase those commodities. For example, you realize that the price, because they had expectations of the changes in the price, people decided that they can go and pick unga, maize flour. They decided they can get maize flour, the rice, and so forth. So at that particular time, the price, the demand for the maize flour and the rice and the wheat flour and those commodities that are for consumption, it went up because of the future expectation of these prices. The other thing that we are going to, another thing that affects demand is that we have competition and fashions. Competition and fashion. You realize that this mostly happens when it comes to clothing industry. And in the clothing industry, you realize that when a certain fashion comes in, when we have a new fashion that comes in, what happens is that very many people tend to purchase that particular commodity because they want to be associated with that, and that is their lifestyle. So with that competition, it means that very many people would like to get. You have also seen that the new models of vehicles comes in because of the fashion and the lifestyle of individuals. Then people tend to demand that particular new model of a clothes, of a car, of a design, and so forth. So all those are the factors that are going to affect. Then there is another thing which is the most important thing, the most important of them. We have the income. Change in income. Call it change in income of people. For example, if you are jobless, what happens? And then you get a job. You realize that the demand for some things now will start coming up. You start demanding more of those things. For all, if maybe you are employed, you are getting a salary maybe of 20,000. This 20,000 you are purchasing only 2 packets of wheat flour. But when your salary hikes, salary increases to 50,000, you realize that the shopping basket now increases. So you have a lot of demand for the goods and services that you require. So those are the factors that we hold constant for the law of demand to apply, or the factors that affect the demand of a particular commodity. Let us look at the exceptions of demand curve. Exceptions of demand curve. Exceptions of demand curve. Exceptions of demand curve. What are the exceptions of demand curve? We are saying that holding all other factors constant, that the demand of a particular commodity increases with decrease in price. That is the normal. That is what we call a normal demand curve. That is price, this is quantity. That is a normal demand curve. Exceptions of demand curve, we are saying that we are having an abnormal demand curve. An abnormal demand curve means that we have a demand curve that does not obey the law of demand, such that if the price increases, you find that the demand is going to increase rather than going the vice versa. Then what are the reasons? Reasons for abnormal demand curve. What may cause a demand curve to be abnormal? What may cause a demand curve to be abnormal? Number one, we say that we have something like war. If there is a war in a particular country, it means that people will not obey the law of demand, because even if the prices hike, people will continue purchasing the goods and the services. If the price, if a particular price decreases, still we will realize that the people will not change their behavior patterns because of the decline in price. They will continue purchasing the same types of goods, or they can lower the way they have been consuming those goods. So number one thing that is major is war. Number two is what we call hoarding. Hoarding is when people are holding. People are maybe they have hid. They have said that we are going now to create a scarcity of a particular good, that they do not release the goods to the market. That is what we call holding. So this holding will mean that even if the price increases, because there is that scarcity of a particular commodity, people will continue purchasing at the price that it will be dictated upon by the market. That is what we have. So those are the reasons. Which are these exceptions of a demand curve? Number one, the exception of a demand curve. We have various types of exceptions that leads to abnormal demand curve. Once we say that for a different types of goods. Different types of goods like given goods. We have given goods. One, given goods. One, a given good will give us an exceptional demand curve. What are given goods? And in these given goods, A given goods, we say that they are goods that are goods inferior to luxury goods. Goods that people determine that they are not luxury, but they are inferior to luxury goods, but you cannot go do without. You say that they are goods that people will consume more even if the prices goes up. People will consume more of that particular good even if the prices goes up. For example, we have something like a given good. For example, if there is famine, example G. For example, if there is famine, and in famine we know that generally people take their beans. Let's use beans. Beans is a protein. People normally use beans for githeri and so forth, or as something to use alongside other things. We have beans, but when there is famine, beans, what we realize is that the price will increase if there is famine, because there will be famine will create scarcity. Famine will create scarcity. But now you will find that instead of people shifting to, let's say, something like meat, instead of people continuing to purchase meat, they will go ahead and purchase beans at a higher price. So in that case, you say that bean becomes a given goods, because people have not decided to go for a luxurious thing which is meat, but instead they opt to purchase beans even at that particular price. And you realize that when this one happens, we'll have now an exceptional demand curve. Because, for example, if our demand curve is like this, let's say we have price 1, quantity 1. What will happen is, if maybe there is scarcity, the price of this good shifts to price 2. So you expect that instead of people purchasing less of these beans, they will continue purchasing more of these beans. What happens is that instead of them shifting, they create it. We call it a shift in demand curve. Instead of people now decreasing the usage of the quantity, they can still remain the same, or at the same time they can increase the quantity, because you realize that the supply, we look at the supply curve. The supply curve is the opposite of demand curve. Let's say, for example, if the price equilibrium was this, and the price of beans increases to this, so you realize that the equilibrium is going to change. The equilibrium is going to change. So you realize that instead the supply will increase for beans rather than decreasing. Remember, you said the rule of demand is that when the price increases, the quantity demanded decreases. And in this case, instead of it decreasing, you realize it continues to increase. So it gives us an exceptional demand curve. The other type of an exceptional demand curve will happen when we have what we call two Veblen goods. If you read ahead and you realize there was a certain economics who was called given, that's why he's saying they are given goods. Veblen goods, we see that there is also a certain economist who was called Thorstein. He was called Thorstein Veblen. Thorstein Veblen. So he came up now with what we call the Veblen goods. And we say that the goods, the Veblen goods, they are goods that they are valuable even as the price increases. You realize that if the price increases, the goods become more valuable. People would like to be associated with the price of that particular good. For example, Veblen goods are something like metals like gold, diamond, diamond, and so forth. These are Veblen goods, such that people would like to be associated. For example, a very good thing, we have the normal earrings that ladies use. Those earrings that I say they are gold ones, they are those that are silver ones, but you realize that the ones that are being sold at 50 bob, you'll be told that the gold ones, they are being sold at 200 shillings, and people want to purchase the gold, so that the people will stay on the, mine is a golden earring. Those are called Veblen goods. Or you have in the case of vehicles, for example, people would like to be associated with the class. Veblen is like class. One, you cannot purchase a Toyota. You instead of buying a Toyota V8, because it is very much known as a Toyota V8, is a high-class, high-end vehicle. Instead of buying that because you have a lot of money, you go and buy what we call a Rolls-Royce vehicle. So that people now would associate with you now with a class. Those are what we are calling Veblen goods. So even if the prices of these Veblen goods increases, then it means that the demand of these particular items will continue to increase. Then the other thing, and all these they cause shifts in demand curve. We will see when we talk about the shifts in demand curve, or what happens. Another thing that will give an exception in demand curve is what we call the future expectations of changes in price. Future expectations. The future expectations in changes. Changes in price. This one represents changes, changes in price. So when people expect prices are going to change, what happens is that if, for example, now people are expecting that the fuel for cars, the petrol and diesel and the kerosene is going to increase. You realize that majority of the people now, they are fueling their vehicles more. So the demand becomes more. If they hear that the price is going to somehow reduce, they just wait. They won't fuel today. They will fuel tomorrow. So those ones now, they cause an abnormal demand curve. The other thing is that the other thing that gives us an abnormal demand curve is necessary goods and services. Necessary goods, e.g., something like salt. Even if you are sold salt at 10,000 shillings, a person will still continue to buy. And you cannot buy more of it. You cannot buy less of it. You say that that one is going to be a necessary thing. Or something like, another good example is medicine. So if a Panadol costs 50 cents, and you are told that a Panadol now costs 10 shillings, you will still purchase that because it is necessary for you to take to alleviate the pain. Those are necessary goods and services. Then the last one is that changes in income. Changes in income. When we have changes in income, it causes abnormal demand curve, because people will demand more. If maybe you have been an ordinary mwananchi, and then being an ordinary mwananchi like us, and then you are nominated to be a cabinet secretary, your lifestyle is going to change. So if all the people can have changes in income from maybe 20,000 to 1 million, you realize that you will have an abnormal demand curve, because you demand more things than what you have been requiring. So those are the exceptional demand curve, or what we are calling abnormal demand curves. Now let us look at the various types of demand. Types of demand. Types of demand. Types of demand. In the types of demand, we have what we call individual. Remember, I talked about the individual and market demand. Number one, we have individual and market demand. That one we talked about. Individual is own. Market is the aggregate of the individuals, or what the market requires. That is what we call individual and market demand. Number two, we have organizational and industrial demand. Organizational demand is that, for example, we have a certain organization that requires certain things, or it may be an organization that requires stationery. If an organization requires stationery, that is organizational demand. When it comes now to industrial demand, it means that we are looking at the various demand for various organizations, which now will resort now to industries that produce those stationeries to also demand for raw materials. So that is what we are referring to as organizational demand, whereby we have various organizations, and industrial demand that will satisfy the demand for the organizations. Then number three, we have demand for perishable and durable goods and services. Demand for perishable and durable goods for services. And we say that we have perishable commodities. They are those commodities that cannot be stored for a long time. Durable goods, they are those commodities that can be stored for a long time. So we have various demands for these kind of items. For example, when it comes to fruits are perishable goods. Clothes are durable goods. So you see that we have different demands, or different demands for this kind of goods. Number four, we have what we call derived demand. And the other thing is derived demand and autonomous demand. Derived demand and autonomous demand. We say that autonomous demand is demand that is derived from demand of other product. Demand derived from demand of other product. For example, mostly this one comes to complementary goods. So you find that, for example, if you are in need of a shoe, you realize that you demand shoe polish, or you demand shoe brush. So that one, the demand for a shoe brush becomes autonomous demand, because that one is derived demand, derived demand. When you demand a shoe, you require a shoe brush or a shoe polish. So the demand for the shoe brush or the shoe polish is a derived demand, because it has come as a result of you requiring a particular shoe. The demand, if you will need some clothes, you need to wash them. So if you need to wash them, you need powder soap or bar soap. So bar soap demand is a derived demand. Or for example, if you need to take tea, you require some sugar or milk. So the demand for sugar or milk becomes a derived demand, because it has come as a result of the thirst that you have. So it has resulted to you getting the demanding the other part of commodity. So this one is that demand that comes as a result of other products. Autonomous demand is that demand not related to demand of others commodities. So in autonomous demand, you see that this one does not depend on any other commodity. That one entirely does not demand on any commodity. Then we have the other type of demand. We have short-term demand and long-term. Short-term demand and long-term demand. So there is demand for short-term. For example, you realize that in most of the cases when the schools are opening, there is a lot of demand for pens, stationery, clothing, and so forth. That one is short-term demand. And when the schools closes, you realize that then those items are no longer required with the frequency or with the bulkiness that they are bought at the time of the opening of the schools. Those are short-term demand. Long-term demand is that if, for example, we do not have the necessity for buildings, then it means that that one will not require building stones and so forth. Then we have the other thing is we have several types of demands. We have the price demand, then we have derived demand or indirect demand. We have joint demand, that you demand jointly with other particular commodities. And then we have what we call composite demand. Composite demand is the demand that you have for more than one particular commodity. You require more than one particular commodity. That is what we call the composite demand. Good. Now let us look at the movements and shifts along a demand curve, because we are saying that various types, we have exceptional demand curves. Let us look at the movements and the shifts. Let us start with the movements. Movements along demand curve. Movements along a demand curve. This is our demand curve. We have price, we have quantity. We say this is our demand curve. A demand curve can be straight, it can be also a curve. All those are various, they are demand curves. As long as it obeys the demand law. It is lines from left to right. It is lines from left to right. That is what you are supposed to remember. Always demand lines from left to right, or it runs from left to right. Okay, now movement along a demand curve, we say that they occur when the price changes. Remember in our law of demand, we say that when the price increases, quantity demanded decreases. When the price decreases, quantity demanded increases. So that one now is going to cause various movements along. Meaning that when we are saying it is along, it is still on that particular demand curve. We are not moving from that demand curve, or if it is the curved one, we are not moving outside the demand. That's what we are calling a movement. And we say that this one, we say that it occurs when a change in the price does not affect the quantity demanded. A movement occurs when the change in price does not affect the change in quantity demanded. Or number two, what we realize, let us do it practically. Let us use a straight one to demonstrate a movement. We said, let's talk of price 1. When we have price 1, our quantity demanded will be quantity 1. If, for example, the price increases to price 2 here, we are saying the quantity demanded goes to quantity 2. Sorry. So the movement does not entirely go out of the same demand curve. We do not change the demand curve. The demand curve still remains the same. But now this change in price, remember we were at point A. When the price changes to price 2, we move to point B. Now, we are moving on this direction. So we are saying that from point A to point B is what we are referring to as movement along the demand curve. Is the movement along a demand curve. Because you realize that we are on the same demand curve and we are only changing the quantity that is demanded. For example, if at price 1 we were purchasing 10 units, at the price of maybe 5 we were purchasing 10 units. If the price changes to 10, we reduce the consumption or the quantity demanded maybe to 2 units or to 5 units. That is what we are calling the movement on along a demand curve. Then we have the shifts. This is along, sorry, not deep. Then we have shifts in demand curve. Let us look at the shifts in demand curve. We have called abnormal demand curve. Shifts in demand curve. Shifts in demand curve. And in the shift in demand curve, our shift in demand curve, we say that it occurs when the whole demand curve moves to the right or to the left. Remember, we have our demand curve. Shifts occurs when whole demand curve moves to left or right. Sorry. In our demand curve, we say we have this being our demand curve, is our price, that is our quantity. When we say it either moves to the right or to the left, let us say this is our demand curve 1, this is our demand curve 1, this is D2, demand curve 2, and demand curve 3. It means either we are shifting from the original demand curve to either left or right. So this is what we are referring to as the shifts. The shifts. The shifts. So those are the shifts in the demand curve. Now, one may tend to ask, why? What causes these shifts? Because we are not, when we go to the advanced economics, you realize that we will be talking about the various aspects, how, and I go into details of how these shifts occur. But now for the purpose of this topic, we are going to look at the factors. What factors affect these shifts? Or what makes now the demand curve to move from one to the other, either to the left or to the right. Number one, remember we say that factors causing shifts. One factor we say that change in income. Your change in income will automatically change your purchasing power. If your income increases, your purchasing power increases. So when we are talking about income, and here we will say that if, let me use income as Y, you know, when we advance to the next levels, you'll be able to see, when income increases, your purchasing power increases. When your purchasing power increases, your demand for more commodities increases. So your demand increases. So you will shift from one demand curve to another one. If your income decreases, your demand is going to decrease because your purchasing power is going to be reduced. So if you have been purchasing 4 packets of unga and your income decreases, like when we have this COVID, no pays and everything, you realize you'll be purchasing 1 because the purchasing power has decreased. So it means that you have been purchasing a quantity at this particular, for example, it is on the same. When this is the normal, call it P quantity, normal, or equilibrium. Be talking about equilibrium. Or equilibrium. If your income increases, what happens that you don't care. If your income increases, the price will still be the same, but you can be able to purchase more. Quantity 1. If your income decreases, this is for increase in income. Increase in income. Why? That is what I've called it. The same price, you can purchase more. If your income decreases, when your income decreases, it will be the same price, but you'll be able to purchase less. Quantity 2. So you are buying decrease in income. You are able to buy less than what you are expected. So the same price will remain, but now the quantity demanded will be more. So what will happen is that we talk about changes in equilibrium. When we come to the demand and supply, we will say the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. So your equilibrium will be, that one was equilibrium original. This one will be equilibrium 2, equilibrium 3. But at the same price. That is what we call now the shift in demand curve. When you have the change in income. Number two thing, we say that when your taste and preferences change. If you change your taste and preferences, tastes and preferences, if you change your tastes or preferences, your preferred commodities, what happens is that if now you change, the price will still, for example, if you have been taking a Coca-Cola and you realize that you require a Novinda, you see that the price of Coca-Cola will still remain the same, but you can be purchasing less of that due to the changes in equilibrium. Or you decide to go for the same brand of Coca-Cola, you increase because you have changed your you demand more, or you demand less for that. The other thing is a change in population. Change in population. The change in population is that when you have maybe in a particular community, population changing. If the population changes, it means that the people will buy at the same price, but the quantity demanded is going to increase. If the population increases, or if the population decreases, the changes decreases. So if it increases, quantity increases. If it decreases the population, the quantity decreases. That is all about that. And the other thing is the changes in expected prices. Changes in expected prices. The changes in expected prices. The changes in expected prices will also cause the demand, because you see the price will still remain the same. It has not changed, but you anticipate it's going to increase. If it is going to increase, you purchase less, you hold. If you purchase more. If you expect that the price will decrease, you purchase less. So you shift from your equilibrium is going to shift. Your equilibrium shifts also. So those are the shifts in the demand curve. Now let us look at what we call elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand. What is elasticity? Elasticity, we say it is the responsiveness of demand. Elasticity. Elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand. And when you are talking about the elasticity, we are talking about the responsiveness of demand to the changes in price. The degree in which the quantity demanded changes with the changes in price. That is what we are talking about. So we are saying that is responsiveness of quantity demanded to changes in prices, or the degree, can you just put at the degree at which the demand changes, quantity demanded, degree at which quantity demanded changes with changes in prices. Remember, we have seen that our law of demand states very clearly, change in price, holding other factors constant, change in price will cause changes in quantity demanded. So we are looking at what degree, at what percentage, yeah? How will quantity demanded respond to the changes in prices? For example, if you are saying that the price of a pen, the price of a pen increases, how will quantity demanded change? That's the question. That is what we are referring to as elasticity. How will it change? To what extent will it change due to the changes in the prices? That is what we are referring to as elasticity. And in the elasticity, we have two types of, types of elasticities. Types of elasticity. One, we have price elasticity. Price elasticity. What is price elasticity? The responsiveness of quantity due to the changes in price. The responsiveness of quantity due to the changes in price. The other thing, we have income elasticity. Income elasticity. Remember, we have said what will cause the quantity demanded to change is levels of income, because levels of income determines the purchasing power of a particular household. So this one will also cause changes or the responsiveness to quantity demanded, which we are calling now the income elasticity. And the other type is we call cross price elasticity. We call cross price sorry. Cross price elasticity. Cross price elasticity, we see that it is the responsiveness of quantity demanded due to change in price of another commodity. This is not for that particular commodity now. It is for the other commodity. The responsiveness due to change in price of other commodity. Like we said, we have complementary goods and substitute goods. So, for example, if the price of tea increases, how will the quantity demanded of coffee respond to that change in the price of tea? That is what we are calling cross price. So we are saying it's like crossing, from moving from this commodity to the other. That is what we are calling cross price elasticity of cross price over elasticity of demand. And we say that let us look at the price elasticity. We have various types of price elasticities. Let me go through them very, very fast. Types of cross price elasticity. Price elasticity. Or when we talk about, mostly we talk about price elasticity because we are dealing with the responsiveness is due to the prices. The responsiveness is due to the prices. And we say that in these types of elasticity, you say that there are those the response can be too high or the response can be too low. Other does not respond, will not respond at all. One here we talk of perfect elastic. Perfect elastic. Perfect elasticity of demand. Call it elasticity of demand. Perfect elasticity of demand. And the perfect elasticity of demand, you realize that this one now it is very simple. Price, quantity. We have price 0. Perfect elasticity is infinite. It is infinite. Meaning that a small change in price can cause very great changes in quantity demanded. Small change can cause very great changes in quantity demanded. That is what we call perfect elastic. Meaning that the correlation, the responsiveness is very sensitive. That a small change causes a very big changes in the quantity demanded. Then we have perfect inelastic. Perfect inelastic. Perfect inelastic. Perfect inelastic, it means that it doesn't matter the quantities, the changes in the prices. The quantity responds kidogo sana. Doesn't matter the changes. Even if we have greater changes in the prices, the quantity demanded responds very slowly. Very slowly. And here now, this is what we have in a perfectly elastic. Inelastic, we have like this, such that we have price 1 can go to price 2, go to price 3, but the quantity still does not respond so much greatly as when it comes to the inelastic. Then we have the other one we call relative inelastic. Relatively inelastic. Relatively inelastic. Relatively. We see that one is number 3. Relatively inelastic, we see that we will talk about if we have maybe like a 20% increase in the price, will cause maybe like a 30% decrease in demand. 30% decrease, such that it is just relative, equal, hapo, not great changes that are happening. Remember when we are talking about elastic, perfectly elastic, and perfectly inelastic, we are saying that in perfectly elastic, a small change in prices causes greater change in quantity demanded. In perfectly inelastic, we are saying that a very big change in prices causes slight changes in quantity demanded. But when it comes to relatively elastic commodity, perfectly elastic demand, we say that it is just relative. Iko hapo tu katikati. So when we say about is relatively elastic, we say that maybe, for example, e.g. 20% increase in price results to maybe like 30% decrease in quantity demanded. And here, this is what will happen. For example, We have that. And then we have that. So we say that, let's say this 20% increase in price results to maybe like 30% decrease in quantity. That is what we are referring to as relatively inelastic demand. And then we have this one is slightly inelastic, inelastic. It is slightly the gradient. Talk about the gradient. The gradient, we have a sharper gradient. We have a sharper gradient such that this change, the change is small. That is inelastic. And then we have relatively elastic. If we have relatively elastic, it is the opposite of inelastic. Is the opposite of inelastic, whereby the gradient is so now it becomes the opposite. 30% change in quantity results to 20%. 30% change in price results to 20%. So this is elastic, where there we have 30, there we have 20. That a small change in quantity demanded as a result of a greater change in price of a particular commodity. Then we have what we call unitary elastic. Unitary elastic is like there is no change at all. Number 4, unitary elastic. Unitary elastic is like static, or per unit. Let's use same. It's like equal unit. It's like equal. Unitary is like equal, meaning that the same change in price will result to the same change in quantity demanded. So you can have your demand curve like that. Price 0, price 1 is price, this quantity, quantity 1, quantity 0. So you realize that this change and this change in price, change in quantity. We are saying that the change in price equals change in quantity. Change in price equals change in quantity. That is what we are referring to as elastic, unitary elastic demand. So now we can look at the various methods of measurements of elasticity. Methods of measuring elasticity. And you say that, remember we have seen that elasticity is the responsiveness of quantity demanded due to the changes in quantity, due to the changes in prices. Quantity changes in the responsiveness of quantity demanded due to the changes in price. Let us look at the various methods as we wind up this topic. Methods of measurements of elasticity. Methods of measurements of elasticity. Methods of measurements of elasticity. Basically, we have two types of methods. We have what we call arc elasticity method, or point elasticity method, where we say that in arc method and point methods, we are determining the relationship, the degree to the responsiveness, either to the arc or at the point. Remember, this one is like when we talked about the shifts in the demand curve. That is where we are going to to look at it. Remember, we say that, remember when we talked about the change, the shifts. Remember when we talk about the shifts in demand curve, we say that when we have various, in the next levels, they are called indifference curves. We call indifference curves, whereby we have different equilibriums. We have different equilibriums. That is where now the equilibrium changes due to the various purchasing powers of various individuals. So these are called indifference curves. And when we remember, we're saying that there can't be satisfaction at this. That is what we call indifference curve. And another person will get satisfied at this point. Another person will get satisfied at this point, being the market equilibrium. Another person gets satisfaction here. Another person gets satisfaction here. But they are on the same levels of satisfaction. This is what we call an indifference curve. That one is for the other topic. So we are saying that the responsiveness now will depend in the degree now of this. How do we measure satisfaction at this point, responsiveness at this point? How do we measure responsiveness at this, the responsiveness at this other point? That is what we are looking at, the methods of measurements. And that's where we are saying there are two methods. Two methods. One, arc method, and a point method. Number one, number two. The arc method and the point. The arc method and the point method. And the arc method, we say that here we are saying this is the midpoint between 2 points, like I've showed you in the difference curve. The responsiveness between two different points. So we are looking at here the responsiveness of this change. That is what we are calling arc elasticity, because we are looking from here to here. Point elasticity, it is at that particular point. Because when it comes to a curve, when you be plotting a curve, you realize that it is the gradient. Let's say that the elasticity is simply the gradient of the demand curve. Elasticity is the simple terms, gradient of the demand curve. That is the elasticity. So that is what we are looking at. In mathematics, when we talk about the gradient, change in y over change in x. So we are looking at. So now when it comes now to economics, we are saying that the change in quantity due to changes in price. And here now we say that percentage change. We calculate percentage change in quantity results to a percentage quantity due to percentage change in price. That is simply what we are talking about. And this percentage change in the arc method, so let us look at the arc method as we conclude. Arc method. And we have said in the arc method, we are saying that percentage change. So we are saying that change in quantity demanded. So we are moving from quantity A, quantity 1, we are moving to quantity 2. So this one equals, so the change is going to be equals to, so quantity 2 minus quantity 1. That one will be the change. And now we are referring to as the percentage change. And then when we have the percentage change, we say that we have to get the average, because we are shifting from quantity 1 to quantity 2. Then on average, we say that we get the average, quantity 1 plus quantity 2. All these divided by 2. That is basically how we calculate our arc method, because we are looking at the percentage change. So in our formula, let us do now our formula. Our formula will be this. Our formula for arc elasticity, which you should get, will be quantity 2 minus quantity 1. That is what we are referring to as the change. Quantity 2 minus quantity 1, all this divided by quantity 1 plus quantity 2, which we are getting on average. Then all this we divide, let us use this sign so that we may know. We divide by the price, because we are looking at the responsiveness of the price. We are moving from price 1 to price 2. So the change is price 2 minus price 1. Then we divide by the average, which is price 1 plus price 2. All these divide by 2. Now I think we can get. So this one now you can be able now to do it. So when it is like that, it is very easy for you to use it. Let's look at this example here. Let's look at this example. Look at the example. If the price of a product decreases, example, that we can get. If price of a commodity, the price of a commodity increases from Kenya shillings 40 to Kenya shillings 40 to Kenya shilling, we can say from, we can use a very simple thing, to Kenya shillings 10 to 8 shillings. The quantity demanded, changes from 40 units to 60 units. What's the elasticity? Elasticity in demand. What's the elasticity in demand? If the price changes from Kenya shillings 10 to 8, leading to an increase in quantity demanded from 40 units to 60 units. And the price elasticity of demand, we can calculate it as the formula that I have given you. You have quantity demanded to, let us start with the price. We can have, this is our price there, price 1, price 2. This is our quantity demanded there, which is quantity demanded when the price was 10 shillings, quantity demanded was 40 units. When the price decreases to 8 shillings, the quantity demanded increases to 60. So here we can be able now to identify. So we can say here as our quantity demanded 2 is equals to 60. Quantity demanded 1 is equals to 40. Price 1 is equals to 10. Price 2 is equals to 8. So we can be able to calculate that. When we have that, so we have said our formula is elasticity of demand, arc elasticity of demand. We have said this, quantity demanded 2 minus quantity demanded 2 minus 1. All this divided by quantity demanded 1 plus quantity demanded 2, all this divided by 2, and all this we divide by change in price, price 2 minus price 1 over average price 1 plus price 2 divided by 2, which is the average. So our quantity demanded 2 is 60 units minus 40 units. All these we divide, quantity demanded 1 is 60. Quantity demanded 1 is 40 plus 60 divided by 2. All these we divide by price 1 is equals to 8, sorry. It is 8 minus 10 divided by 10 plus 8 over 2. So this one will come to, this is 20 divided by 40 plus 60, 100 divided by 50. All this divided by negative 2 over 18 divided by 2 is 9. So this one can equals to 20 over 50 times 9 over minus 2. So this one can go to 18 divided by 10 if you cancel it out. So it's going to be 1.8, which is negative. Remember, we have a negative. But in the elasticity, it is coming to a negative because it is a negative. Elasticity, you ignore the negative. Ignore the negative sign. Ignore the negative sign because the negative sign represents the inverse relationship between price and demand. Remember, we saying that as the price increases, the demand decreases. So the negative now represents the inverse relationship. So we just ignore the negative sign. So our elasticity becomes to, elasticity of demand is equals to 1.8. You ignore the elasticity because that is what the negative sign represents the inverse relationship. Remember, we have the gradient, the slopes from left to right. That is what we call now the arc elasticity. And let's say we can look at the point elasticity as a method. Point elasticity. Point elasticity. Point elasticity is very easy because it is just the gradient. Because we are looking at the elasticity, the responsiveness at a certain point on a demand curve or between 2 points. So basically we calculate the gradient. And when we calculate the gradient, we say that we are looking at the change in quantity is the change in quantity divided by the quantity, change in quantity divided by quantity. All these change in price divided by price. As simple as that. Change in price divided by price. That is the gradient. Change in quantity. Graphically, we say that if we do it graphically, because we are saying between 2 points, we are looking at this change. For example, elasticity between these 2 points. Between these. So we are looking at the change in quantity at point A and change in quantity at point B. That is what we are referring to as the change in quantity. So we are moving from A to B or from B to A. And then we look at the change in price price from 1 to price 2, and like that, or from price 2 to price 1. The change in quantity, the change in quantity demanded. That is the point elasticities, and that is how we calculate the K factors, the elasticity in demand. Now, to conclude our topic, let us look at the factors influencing the elasticities in demand. What are these factors? And as you can see, you can be able to deduce what affects the responsiveness to demand. And without much saying, we can see that income is one of them. The nature of the commodity is another thing. We can talk about the price levels. We can talk about the postponements of consumption. We can talk about the number of uses of a particular item. We can also refer to as the time period in which that particular commodity is being demanded, or that particular time the commodity is demanded. So the factors influencing elasticity, factors influencing elasticity. I've said 1, income. 2, price levels. 3, postponements. Postponement of usage. Postponement of usage. The other thing we have talked about is the income levels. We've talked about the income levels, postponement of usage. We can say that the number of uses of that particular item, number of uses. Remember of a commodity. Remember there are commodities that have more than one use. Then we can say that share in total expenditure. We can talk about the share in total expenditure. And here let me explain and say that the share in total expenditure, we can say that, remember you have your income. You decide how much amount of money you want to use. So maybe you have 10,000. How much have you allocated for food stuff? How much have you allocated for traveling? So the share will also determine the elasticity, the responsiveness. Because if you find that you are not allocated a lot of share in your whole budget, in your budget it has a small share, a very slight price is going to affect how much you demand at a particular thing. Number 6, we have the time period, the period in which you require that commodity. You realize that there are some times that you require to use this commodity, but other times you don't require. What time exactly do you require to use that particular commodities? And the same thing, you say that now, the other thing that affects, we see that availability. If you are talking about substitutes, availability of substitutes. Because if substitutes are so much available, then the responsiveness to changes in the price will affect the demand of that particular commodity. Because if the substitutes are not available, you continue using that particular item until you get something else to substitute. Now, those are the various factors that influence the elasticity. Now, where do you use elasticity? How can we be able to use elasticity? What we call the uses of elasticity. As we conclude this topic, uses of all, instead of uses, application. Uses stroke application. Application of concept of elasticity. Where do we apply elasticity? Because we are saying it is the responsiveness of price due to the changes in prices. Where do we basically apply the concept of elasticity? One, we are saying that it's going to help us to analyze economic problems, because the responsiveness to prices now will help you determine how responsible or how responsive you are going to be when it comes now to economic problems. Number two, it helps in solving managerial issues. Solving managerial issues is like in an organization. You might decide when you are going to produce or when you are not going to produce due to the frequent, when you are able to learn how price will respond, will affect the quantity demanded. So you realize that it will assist the managers determine if this price increases, then we are going to purchase less of raw materials, or we are going to make less of advertisements, or we are going to make more of advertisements, and so forth. So that concept is going to assist managers in order to do that. At the same time, this is going to assist in price controls. Elasticity assists in price controls, because there are those commodities, or setting the prices. There are those commodities that won't the price won't affect the quantity demanded. So it means that they can capitalize on those to get their income. At the same time, there are those that will, slight changes will affect the productivity or the production of that particular commodity. So it means they are going to make very informed decisions when they apply the concept of elasticity. And the other thing that is going to assist in mostly the government, it assists the government in determining how it is going to do the valuations of its forex when it comes to the exports of the depreciation of the company due to the export earnings that they gain from them, a particular commodity, because they all know when they produce this, the price affect demand in this, or vice versa. So they will be able to make some informed decisions when it comes to that. At the same time, it also assists the governments in formulating the taxation of policies, because there are those commodities that are going to be taxed, and the consumers still they continue to use that particular commodity. For example, since time immemorial, there is no time price for beer has ever reduced, or cigarettes. It always continues to increase. It is due to the more they tax, the more people drink, the more they smoke cigarettes. They don't stop. So elasticity assists in making such informed decisions. And with that, we have covered the whole topic of demand. And the next topic will be about the supply analysis. We will look at the supply analysis, and from there, the supply analysis, when we combine that, now it will be able to give us to determine the equilibrium, and we will learn from that. Thank you very much for listening and taking time. In case you have any question, you can be able to channel them from the numbers that are there, and we'll be able to get some assistance that you require. Any question on any topic, you can relate to the Achievers College website or the numbers that have been given, and you will be able to get some assistance. Till next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.